we good to go?
Yep,
Yeah?
you're good.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, thanks everybody for coming out, kicking off Develop Denver 2018. Really appreciate it. I'm Isaac Miller, and this panel that we're going to be doing for the next 45 minutes or so, I've called All Roads Lead to Root, just talking about tech education. So up here we have 7 panelists from a variety of backgrounds, all working in the tech industry right now. So hopefully we're going to have a great conversation, just kind of free-flowing, and talk about all of our various backgrounds and paths and everything. At the end, I do want to save room for some audience questions, so definitely think of those while you're watching here, but unless it's something that's really burning in your heart, we'll probably have just the panel discuss it first, and then we'll open it up at the end. Kicking off with some introductions, so I'll go first. I'm Isaac Miller. I graduated from Galvanize's Web Development Immersive Boot Camp in 2016. It's a 6-month in-person immersive. So I think for at least the boot campers and self-taughters, a little explanation on where you came from, how you learned what you learned. And yeah, right now I work as a software developer for this startup called Perbyte. Before that I was at Vertifor, so I'm still getting used to the startup life, but yeah, it's cool. We'll just go down the line here. We have the one microphone, so Crystal.
Hello, I'm Crystal Preston Watson. I am mostly self-taught. Until last week I was going to Galvanize, and right now I'm in the middle of a background check to kind of go into my go into accessibility engineering. So yeah, that's me. But before that, I was QA for several of web development agencies, Ping Identity, and Thinkful, and several other, a lot of places.
My name is Peterson. I graduated from Thinkful's data science bootcamp just this last July. Thinkful's data science bootcamp, and they also have a web development and engineering immersion. So it's an online-based program with one-on-one mentoring and project-based learning. The part-time program is about 6 months worth of curriculum, but again, it's part-time, so you can work through it. I currently work as a data scientist at a company called Dia & Company. It's a women's plus size, essentially shipping company.
I'm Kevin McKernan, senior front-end engineer at AirDNA, which is a local startup. My education background is very minimal. I'm all self-taught. GED, 6 weeks of community college, and that's it.
Hi, I'm Ashley Noble. So I graduated from Bowling Green State University. My major was visual communication technology, and I picked up a minor in marketing, so I did a lot of graphic design, photography, and web design. I originally started at Abercrombie & Fitch as a web analyst and developer, and currently I'm a front-end engineer at Vail Resorts. So I'm also starting to take classes at Thinkful, so a lot of it was kind of learn as I go, and my education as well kind of incorporated into that. So yeah, a bunch of different skills all over the place.
Hello, my name is Ben Caffrey. My education background is I studied math and computer science at Carleton College, which is a 4-year liberal arts school in Minnesota. Then I worked for a while at Epic Systems, which is a large healthcare technology company, and right now I work at a startup called Loxo, just a few blocks away from right here in Denver.
And hi, I'm Gabi Procell. I am a studio art major from Beloit College, 4-year liberal arts college in Wisconsin. And after that, I decided I wanted to work with animals. And so I have a veterinary technician certification too. Did that for 7 years. And then I went to Turing to study front-end engineering. And right now I'm in a strange place where I'm looking and doing freelancing work too at the same time.
I'm Jordan Stephenson, and I also went to Galvanize with a 6-month program. I currently work at Crocs, the shoe company. And then also before that, I was in tech sales, so not too much, I guess, technical background before that. But yeah, so I've been a junior developer for 1.5 years.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so moving into the kind of questions discussion part of it, since we've got the one mic, just kind of raise your hand. That'll be the one time that we like go down the line and everyone has to answer. But kicking off, how did your education prepare you for your first job in the industry? So for me, at least going to Galvanize, I felt pretty well prepared for the day-to-day coding side of it. I felt like the coding skills were all there. It was a lot more of kind of the DevOps sort of things, computer science sort of things that I didn't really know out the gate. And because I started in kind of an enterprise sort of software company working on a gigantic like 3 million line code base, I just wasn't prepared for what projects looked like at scale. I was used to doing my own simple little CRUD apps and then going and jumping into this gigantic system that integrates with other systems and stuff was definitely something that was new to me at that point. Anyone else want to speak on how their education set them up? Yeah.
I will say the amount of to-do lists that we had to do definitely helped land the first job for sure. Also, something we did in the last mod was, I think we were all just sick of being in the basement at that time. So nobody wanted to do our projects down there. And we had really started to work on our communication via pull requests and Slack, and then pairing on Screen Hero and stuff like that. And the first gig I got was a remote front-end job at an agency that's actually out in Green Bay. So I think that really helped a lot with working on my communication skills for that.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Sure, I can say that I was actually surprisingly unprepared. I think in my first job, I really liked when I was in college, like the theoretical and the math side of everything. And I was like shockingly bad at like source control or like, a lot of the more gritty things were kind of surprising me. I was able to adjust, but I think in a lot of ways, from what I've heard, the boot camps do a better job of preparing you for like really like, a lot of the more nitty gritty like aspects of developing software.
I can touch on that too. I definitely did not feel prepared at all with my first job. There was just, I went into it thinking that I knew a lot, but I actually didn't know anything. There was just so much to learn and so many different terms that I didn't understand that people higher up from me were using, and it was just a lot of learn as I go. And I think the reason that they liked that was just they were able to train me and kind of mold me to what they were looking for. But I think with the boot camps, it's definitely more hands-on and you're more focused on a certain topic, whereas from my university, there was just so many different skills that we were learning, and it was just kind of touching on a bunch of different things.
Yeah, I think I was prepared for like 90% of what I needed to do, all of like the analysis, etc. There were also like obviously topics that you can't cover in a boot camp, but I think that the thing that Thinkful did well was like teach you how to resource yourself and figure out if you don't know something, how can you learn it for yourself. And so that's definitely something that I'm continuing to learn, which I love.
For me, my first kind of job, I had no experience whatsoever. I was actually a web editor at Westward, and I had before that tooled around with like GeoCity websites, and so they were like, well, we don't really have anybody interested in being a web editor. Do you know like HTML, CSS? And I'm like, from as little as I know from GeoCities. And that kind of, and that's where I started, and I was very woefully not prepared for like doing more technical stuff, and it just kind of went from there. So I kind of wish I did have more experience before kind of delving into code.
Cool. Yeah, and that I think goes along really well with my next question as far as what skills did you have to pick up on the job? And for me, it was a lot of my first job. The back end was all in C#, and Galvanize being a JavaScript boot camp, I touched a little bit on C#, mostly kind of an elective way, but in general, OOP programming concepts were all pretty new to me, and especially working in a statically typed language was really new to me. And to sort of, I think, in talking about this, want to talk about like how I learned those things. A lot of it was from having people on my team that were good at those things. Full disclosure, Ben and I worked together at that job, and he was very helpful coming from that more CS traditional background, kind of helping with those sorts of things. And beyond that, it was a lot of like Udemy tutorials and stuff to kind of get up to speed. Anyone else have stuff they'd like to speak to on stuff they picked up on the job? Yeah, Gabi.
One of the probably the hardest things to teach and hardest things to learn is just problem solving, which is what we actually end up doing all the time in our jobs. Whether that's like how to solve a problem or what tool to use. I think that's probably one of the harder things, that it just kind of takes some time to, figure out how to do that. And it might not be that you've solved a problem before, but it might be like solved this specific problem before. But as you have more experience working through things, you figure out what kind of questions to ask, and that's something to kind of try to be mindful of, I think, because it's definitely hard to learn.
Yeah, totally.
I think one of the things that I haven't done yet, but I know that I will be doing, is productionalizing some of the code that I've been doing for the modeling and the analysis. So that's one of the things that I will be learning, and I think that will come from finding some resources, maybe some Udemy, and just talking through other people who've done it.
In my first job, I was blessed to have a really, really attentive mentor as well, because I was thrown onto the mobile team, which was also new to me at the time, so got really caught up on React Native, on Fastlane, and ways to deploy those apps too. So that was a huge thing, was having someone there to support me for those first few months at least.
Yeah, I know for me, I remember at Galvanize, they were talking about Salesforce, and I was like, that sounds pretty boring. And then I actually got a job that had a lot of Salesforce in it, so of course I had to, hit the ground running and learn it. So a lot of it, and Salesforce is a little different, they kind of keep their code under wraps, and so a lot of it was just asking a lot of people and getting up to speed that way.
Awesome. So of course we all pursued our various educational paths to get that first dev job. And so the next thing is just kind of talking about how that educational background impacted your job search. So this, for me, I feel this a couple different ways. I felt like I had a really good career services team at Galvanize, had people I could reach out to look over my resume, do kind of mock interviews, that sort of thing. But going to a boot camp definitely had to do a lot of proving myself that I was educated in this, that I did have skills. I have bachelor's degrees in music and English, which a lot of fun, a lot of student debt for not a lot of jobs. And so it's hard to explain from this liberal arts background that I've gotten into something that is I still think very artistic, but really being able to explain that I can do the really just quantitative, the skills that are required for the job. How about other folks?
I don't, so for me, I don't have a degree. I am a several-time dropout of C.D. Mulder and twice, sorry. And sorry, I had to stand up because I'm like sliding off the seat, and I didn't want to just like fall. Dropout twice of C.D. Mulder. I'm a dropout of Metro, so it actually was kind of hard to get people at first to take me seriously. So it was a lot of taking really low-paying, like, hey, take this Photoshop PSD to build out an HTML CSS, and only in the last, I feel like the last 5 years have I, my lack of having a degree has not really mattered, because it was definitely a struggle. And one of the reasons why I ended up going to Galvanize, and I also didn't finish there because I accepted a job offer, is that I just felt I wanted to have something that was like, hey, here's a piece of paper, you see that? And that actually didn't happen either.
I have 2 degrees in chemistry, so I had the analytical background, and so that did help in my job search. I think the thing that helped me most was Thinkful has a great career services team, again with the resume and helping you, if they have some connections in an area, finding you some of those connections. That's actually how I found my job, was a recommendation from the career services team. And the other thing that I didn't mention before is that Thinkful also has a job guarantee. So if you complete the program within 6 months, and after 6 months after graduation you don't have a job, then they will pay you your tuition money back. So that's great motivation for the career services team to continue supporting you. I also really think that the projects that I worked on throughout the program to develop my portfolio really helped in saying, like, yes, I have all of this chemistry background and other work history, but I know how to do this code too. So I think that's an essential part.
I'm kind of like Isaac too. My undergrad really didn't mean much, so what I really focused on was things I could change. I really focused on my portfolio and things like that, so try to kind of bring the tension away that my undergrad degree really didn't, I guess, relate to my career. So.
I'm just going to follow up with Ashley or Ben or both. Going to a traditional university where the career services department is a little more general, not necessarily boot camps. It's all very directed towards development jobs or data science jobs. How was that like? Did you work with your career services department? And if so, was it helpful, not helpful, that sort of thing?
So throughout my education, we had to do 3 internships. A lot of my internships were in Colorado, but I did a few in Columbus too. So that kind of helped just to get my portfolio going and my resume looking nice. But when I graduated, before I graduated, we had to do one course where it was strictly focused on working with clients and how to start, looking for the right job, what you need to do to build your portfolio, whether it's a website or on paper, stuff like that. But when I first graduated, it was a lot of I immediately got on LinkedIn and started applying to everything I could possibly think of. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, so it was a lot of web development and graphic design jobs. And then when I got with my job, or when I had my job at Abercrombie, that's kind of when I got locked in and went back to university and just gave advice on things that could have been tweaked and things that really worked for me. But my senior year, their career service department was really helpful with just being like, hey, these are past internships that students have had. These companies are good connections to have, and so that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, the Career Center in my college was also super helpful. I remember going to fall term of my senior year, I started thinking, all right, I should go to these, companies would come visit campus, and just in our math and computer science building, one of the classrooms, 5 o'clock, they would give a presentation. And I remember one in particular, I went, there were 3 or 4 people from a software consulting company to present, and I was the only student there, and there were probably 4 pizzas and 10 t-shirts. And it was just me and the 4 of them talking to them. So I feel like there was a lot of on-campus recruitment, and I ended up, probably October, signing on with Epic, so pretty early in the fall term, and then feeling all right, I don't have to keep looking. So it was nice, at the time being somewhat oblivious, mentioning LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn more frequently, but at the time, I didn't know what was going on, and after class, there would just be a company in the classroom next to me and saying, hey, come, are you interested? Check out what we do, here's a t-shirt. So that was kind of nice because it's kind of spoon-fed. I feel relatively fortunate that happened because at the time I wasn't cued into sort of all the dynamics that go into the interview process and the job search process.
Awesome. Another big thing, once we graduate, beyond obviously getting that first job, is also kind of continuing our education, building out our professional network. So I'm kind of curious how your educational backgrounds helped or hindered you in building out that network and meeting other peers in the industry. For me, I felt like it was really beneficial that Galvanize is a meetup space and is, for lack of a better term, incubator. Like there's a lot of startups there, and you just sort of naturally just grabbing coffee and stuff. We'll meet people in the industry, and when there's a meetup right after class, it's really hard to make excuses not to go to that meetup. It's a lot easier, now, even working to be like, I don't feel like doing that tonight. But when it's literally happening in 10 minutes in the next room over, it got me into the mode of going to meetups frequently, which I felt was really helpful. How about all y'all?
I think that's the one challenge with Thinkful is that it is online. So yes, there's a great Slack community, but they encourage you to go to meetups, and I think that I didn't realize the power of going to meetups until much later. And so I really enjoy going to them now and continue to go to them. I think, so before I went to Thinkful and during Thinkful I was a teacher, and so my whole network was educators, and so it was hard to make some of those connections, and so I was really thankful that Thinkful did push me into going to meetups and expanding that network.
I will say at Turing, we did have, I don't know if they still do it, but Fridays were kind of soft skills, how to not be an asshole type days. So we'd have these spikes where you'd have this huge issue you'd discuss and debate on that people are likely to have polarized views on. And I think just learning to talk about that in a safe space, in a friendly manner as well, was huge. I also felt like I was encouraged to create groups of special interests. So I would do things like, we organized a diversity coalition that would try and get more students of color and from other backgrounds into the school. I organized, because I love board games, on Fridays we'd have board game lunch days too. I'm kind of doing that now with Denver Devs to make my own clubs. So, but yeah, that was huge for me. And we also had some other clubs at the time called posses that formed around things. So I was in one that centered around game design. We really never got anything done, but it was nice to like just do a little quick spike on something and maybe learn a thing or two. Yeah.
Not so much my educational background, but getting started in the industry, I was freelancing, doing small websites, and in retrospect, I wish I had gone to more meetups. Would have been a good way to meet people, to just kind of get connected. I've done a lot more of that in the last few years, and it's been really beneficial. So, and especially if you're working remotely, doing boot camp remotely, freelancing, if you're doing anything where you're kind of on your own, kind of lone wolf, finding some local meetups to go to is definitely a good thing. Even if the topics at it aren't, it might be, oh, well, I've already done this, or I know how to do this, whatever. Just go for the people, because half the reason you go to a meetup is for the talks, the other half is to meet the people that are there.
Which, good time to shout out the Denver Devs Happy Hour, which is tonight, and also the second Tuesday of every month. It's a great meetup because it's just about the people. The talks and everything are also great at meetups, great way to continue your education, but the nice thing with Denver Devs is that you are just focused on meeting people you haven't met before and sharing beers, which is never a bad thing. Yeah, that helps. So I'm going to guess that the interest for some of the people in the room attending the panel today is looking at, would you recommend the path that you went educationally to someone who just graduated high school, and does that answer change if you're talking to someone who perhaps already has an established career and is looking to switch? Chris?
No. Especially someone who's I think someone who's just graduated high school and doesn't want to go the college route, I would definitely suggest doing a boot camp. I was, if there was things like Turing and Galvanize when I kind of was, in college, I would have done that because I really, I couldn't do a traditional type of educational route, but I had probably a harder time than really I wanted or really needed with kind of learning things on my own and on the job. So I would definitely advise that don't try to. I think if you're really interested in web development, it's one of those things that maybe I should be go to school and work hard and study, and I feel bad about trying to say that when I didn't do that myself. but if someone was I don't like school and I just want to get in there and do real things, and I'm kind of like that, I would just a good alternative is to do one of these boot camps, and kind of you don't have to deal with some of the other I don't want to say other kind of crap because it's not really crap, but there's just it's traditional college and traditional higher education is not for everyone, and if this is something that speaks to them, then yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I definitely echo a lot of what Crystal said. Just my path, traditional education, just has never really worked well for me. Those kind of I have to learn this and I don't care about it. I'm not interested. I'm never going to use it. I had lots of teachers say I would, but 10 years later they were wrong. That's okay. But yeah, the self-taught, the 100% self-taught route was definitely very difficult. And when I was getting out of community college and just started working and doing kind of web stuff on the side, was right around when kind of Galvanize was getting off the ground, and so I didn't even know it was a thing back then. So I probably would have gone to a boot camp if they had been around 10 years ago. I think that's a great route for kind of getting people into the industry. Definitely for people that are looking at career switching. I would say maybe even before you start into a boot camp, just kind of maybe do an online course, go to a meetup or something. Make sure this is something you're going to enjoy. Everybody gets up and gives talks about the awesome things they're doing, but every job has its suck. There are parts of development that are tedious. It's frustrating. We've all had the beating our head against a keyboard for an entire day until you find a semicolon you missed. It can be very frustrating, and kind of advice for people that are career switching is kind of kick the tires a little bit before deciding it's something you want to get into. And if you do get frustrated, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a good fit for you. You might just be frustrated, so kind of find some people to talk to. Again, I can't stress enough how much I missed out on by not getting involved in meetups earlier.
I think, like everyone has been saying, it depends on what type of person you are. When I graduated high school, I had no idea what I really wanted to do. I come from a family where everyone is in medicine, and I just knew that I wasn't good at chemistry, so I couldn't go that route. But I've always been creative, and so what I liked about my major was it gave me a ton of different routes. So I wasn't able to get bored with, if I were given a web development course my freshman year, I don't think I would have lasted very long because I would get so frustrated on stuff I couldn't figure out. And I actually failed my first web development course because I just couldn't keep up with it with all my other classes. But I think one thing I liked that I did when I first graduated high school was kind of explore and see what options were out there for me. But the only thing with the educational background of going to college is you are taking a lot of classes that you're I'm spending so much money on this and I'm never going to use any of this ever again. And so that's where, if there were boot camps offered to me when I was in high school and I had that knowledge background, I think it would have made more sense to explore more of that opportunity. But I also do like my education background just because I have all of the other artistic skills from that I would have, had from a boot camp. So it just depends on what type of person you are and what routes you want to go, I guess. So.
I think I kind of hop on the it depends bandwagon. At least thinking back to like high school me and what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew it was something creative, but I also admittedly went to college just to run track and party. So there's also that. And I don't want to like bash on teenagers today, but I feel like you have to be in a very mature mind space to get into this field or to do a boot camp, because that was like, it's gonna sound hard, but like the worst months of my life, because it was just all that all the time, and I don't know if I could take that at 18 necessarily. So I think I've been telling kids I do talk to, to really think about college if that is what you want to do, mainly because I'm still paying back all my loans. And so unless you're like truly passionate about that, maybe take a couple years and figure out what it is you want to do. And either get into the boot camp or do a 2-year thing, something like that. I feel like that's a lot more valuable.
And I think, it's a great point that, a lot of college was, you had to learn things just to learn it. And that really bugged me. And now I didn't really know there was actually another world out there that I didn't have to do that, where, boot camp is really you're learning things that are you're going to apply. So I would say yes.
Awesome. Yeah. We've got about 5 more minutes, so I did want to open it up to any audience questions if folks have them. Anyone? Just raise a hand and I'll repeat it into the mic. Yeah.
In terms of meetups, can you guys talk a little bit about some of your sort of first experiences, sort of traction, just sort of what that first experience was like to attend meetups for the first time?
Cool. Just to repeat it for the camera, and if any of you didn't hear, he's asking what that experience was like attending a meetup for the first time. Just kind of, what that looked like. For me personally, the first meetup that I attended, that I remember attending, was the Node.js meetup, which luckily one of my instructors at Galvanize was running, which is cool. And then it was also on some Node security stuff that just went right over my head because I was like 2 months into the program. So it was an interesting balance of, at first, feeling like as the talk was going, some imposter syndrome of like, I have no idea how this works. But then also, afterwards, I ended up talking with other galvanizers, people from Turing, and realizing that we're all figuring it out how these things work, and the only way you're going to learn them is by attending stuff like that.
Definitely don't hesitate to jump around. I'm a co-organizer for the React Denver meetup, and I became a co-organizer in March, and the first one I went to was in February. So I kind of jumped headfirst into that one. I had gone to some different meetups before. Denver Devs Happy Hour is definitely worth it. But you may go to an event that you don't really enjoy, and if you're not enjoying it, don't make yourself go again. There are so many, you go look at Meetup, there's something tech in Denver every night of every week, all month. So you can definitely find something that you can work into your schedule, and you can definitely find something that'll be a good fit for you. But yeah, make sure to shop around and find something that you really enjoy doing.
I was definitely scared to go to my first meetup. I don't typically, that's not my environment. But Thinkful did have some part of their career services curriculum was teaching you here's how you can go to a meetup. Here are things you can say and questions you can ask to help like understand another person and get to know them. Of like, what things are you working on, and like what things do you need help with? And oh, I learned this, so I can help you with that. My first meetup was the Women in Tech meetup, which was a great like ease into meetups because it wasn't too technical, but it was a great way to meet some other, especially females in tech.
Get another question. Think over here. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time and change anything about your education, what would you change?
So she asked if you could go back in time and change anything about your education, what would you change? Sort of talking about the traditional university path. I probably didn't need to take 2 semesters of bowling when I was studying for my English degree, or intro to spaceflight. Neither are things that I use, for my day-to-day gig. But I would say with Galvanize, I wouldn't change a whole lot, other than if it was humanly possible, I guess I would have done more with my 6 months. But I did feel like I was doing 12-hour days these weeks, so I don't know how much more I really could have done. But yeah, that's really just squeezing every ounce out of that time, where you have the full support of instructional staff, career services, that sort of thing. How about you?
I definitely wish I would have sought out more resources instead of just kind of like trying to figure things out on my own. Whether that being meetups or maybe kind of taking a class on a topic somewhere, not necessarily like enrolling in school, but just kind of looking to other people for advice. I've had many of the kind of, and I still to this day have the like plateaus in learning, like you feel like you're learning a lot, or you kind of get to a point where you're like, I'm stuck, I don't know how to do this, like, well, I know how to build a React app, but I don't know how to build the backend API, and like you're stuck there for a while, and you're like, oh, now I know how to do the backend, and like you kind of get to these places where you're stuck, and it takes you a while to kind of break through that, and having other people to help would have definitely helped me get over some of those humps in my career.
I think, and it's a hard thing to do, is to not feel like an imposter while you're going through it, and to make sure that as you are learning, you're like confident in what you know, and not thinking, but there's so much more I don't know, because there's always going to be more that you don't know. Everyone has it. So making sure that you find that confidence in yourself.
I think I would have slowed down a lot more. I felt like I had to keep up at the pace everyone else was, which was way too fast for me. So just telling myself that it's going to be fine if I sit out a mod or 2 maybe, and just focus on fundamentals would have been huge.
I think, other than like I would invent Facebook, it would be, weirdly enough, I think I probably would have did the traditional like college route, just because college, though it really wasn't the right fit, it was a way for me to get out of a bad situation. But I probably would have looked into doing computer science, because I really, when I got to college, I spent most of my time like just like doing stuff on my computer and not going to like class. I was a biology major, but I felt that I wasn't smart enough to do anything with like programming, and so I never, even though I would spend all my time like trying to figure out like websites and like all also playing games and stuff like that. I like at one point taking apart like my computer and like trying to put it back together again, which ended badly. I really wish if I could go back, I would probably like go that route to see how it would work.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's. Oh, yeah. Do we have one more? We have time for one more. Yeah.
How do companies like react to people out of boot camp? Like, are they cool that you don't have like a piece of paper, or like, what should we like do to like kind of stand out from all like the boot campers that are coming in?
Yeah, so he asked, how do companies react to boot campers? I think kind of mostly in the job interview process or job search process, and how do you explain not having this piece of paper that says I have a degree in computer science? I've got an answer for this one, but we also have a lot of boot campers up here. So, anyone feeling froggy on it? Yeah. Anyone is great.
Sure, I'll take it. As somebody that's interviewed developers at almost every job I've held, I think. It's definitely hard. I haven't been in a position in the past where we've really had room on the team for entry level, and that's been disappointing to me. But that just kind of is what it is at certain organizations. My advice to you would be humility. I'm on Denver Devs, I see lots of posts of, hey, I just graduated from Galvanize, and it's like, here's all of the technologies I know, here's everything I've worked with, and maybe focus more on like what you accomplished than what you have worked with. When I've applied to jobs, I have a big laundry list of like things I've worked with before. But kind of like hone in on what are the things that you enjoyed and what are the things that you like really worked with for a while. I know it is a very tough position because you have the education, but you don't have any. That was going to come out poorly. I was going to say, but you don't have any experience, and I don't mean that how it sounds. It's hard to get that first experience, and as a self-taught, self-employed freelancing developer, I had that same struggle where it was, I've done this and I've built these websites, but like on my resume, I'm just like, I'm a web developer and I work for myself, and that doesn't necessarily come across the same way as I worked at this company, we worked on these projects, and so you have to kind of think about how you present yourself to make yourself valuable, or not to make yourself valuable. Does everybody get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
At Thinkful, we were kind of encouraged not to call it a boot camp, to call it a program, partially to get around the boot camp stigma, but also to be like, we have learned all of these things, and it's not necessarily this no offense to 12 weeks and done boot camp. It was 6 months worth of working with it. So we also had the advantage of people not really knowing Thinkful, and so saying Thinkful data science program, then they had to ask and be like, what is that, and what did you do there? So kind of advantage and disadvantage of calling it a data science program.
Awesome. I want to be respectful of the speaker coming up after this, but I think I'll at least be milling about. I don't know how much you guys are all available, but we'll be hanging out after here. We got another talk starting at 11. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out, and a round of applause for all of our panelists here.